Hello, let's look at how we would build out architecturally significant requirements or epics or stories. We at ISA have renamed what we once called ASRs or architecturally significant requirements to ARS or architecturally relevant stories to align to the agile development taxonomy or nomenclature. I personally would prefer to just call it AREs or architecturally relevant epics because that's really the level that we as IT architects or enterprise architects would put our focus on. This is the canvas. This is the architecturally relevant stories, or what I would prefer to have called architecturally relevant epic looks like. Let's go into the canvas, but before we do that, let's look at how epics, stories, and requirements, how do they all fit in? So here we have an epic under which there are multiple stories, and for each of these stories you could have multiple or several requirements. So let's look at what this epic is about. The epic is really asking for a mobile app to be developed for all the goodness that it can deliver in terms of advance orders and people not having to wait in queues and so on and so forth. So that's the big story. That's the big picture. To deliver on this picture, there will be different viewpoints. Now, in this case, the stories are those different viewpoints. So we have a customer saying, okay, when I use this phone app, I want to be able to specify the name and person for each different item that I order. And the barista person saying I should have a clear visibility of person, name, and item and the ability to print them out together. And then the cash teller saying I should be able to see the entire order as a whole and in its individual parts. And in this manner, there can be multiple stories for each of these different viewpoints that can be expressed through this kind of a format. And then, of course, we come down to the real detail implementation almost or implementation of these of the epics and the stories, and that's more in terms of how are we going to actually use this phone app that we are building in this case. Now I want you to kind of think about something else that this kind of aligns to, and that is the business capabilities. So if you remember, in the business capabilities we fundamentally talked about what as the business capability being a what. What does the business do? Can you see a link, a kind of similarity between the idea of the epic as a what is required? Then the stories connect to, in the business capability architecture, we talked about a who. Who is going to deliver on a service or a capability? And here we have the who or the whom in this case, of course, because there are several. Whom are these stories about? Or who all are going to be delivering on this epic? And then finally, of course, we have the how in terms of the requirements, which is, of course, things like, being able to select something or enter something and so on and so forth. Here we have the architecturally relevant story canvas worked out, or as I prefer to call it, epic worked out. You can see I've used the same epic, which is basically about building a mobile app to improve the quality in terms of time, the performance, and to not have customers wait. I've put it as a type epic rather than a story or a requirement. You could well do that too, but remember, we are architects, and so our focus really needs to be on that which is significant to the business. From a systemic impact that we have to consider as we build out this application, this phone app or this functionality, we have to think in terms of customer privacy, very important. We have to think in terms of integrating it with the point of sales and the menu of the day. And of course, in terms of the high impact it will have from an experience for the customer perspective. And so we got to think in terms of the way marketing will use this new tool to brand Tinkleman. Sizing is of course all about what it's going to take us to build out this application. Then there are specific measures across architecturally relevance perspectives and complexity perspectives. And here you can see financially, yes, there is a relevance, but it's not too high. And my guess is probably because the real value that this is supposed to generate is customer loyalty, customer satisfaction, uh, essentially. And of course, there's going to be a certain amount of financial gain or revenue, but the prime motive is customer satisfaction. It's relevant from a roadmap perspective because what we are saying is that it's an important milestone on the roadmap. It's an important deliverable on the roadmap. Maybe there's even a conference on which date we are supposed to launch this phone app. From a quality attribute perspective, yes, there's security and performance that are probably going to be important. Uh, but again, since it's a phone app, maybe we're kind of keeping the quality attribute relevance not so high. And the same with risk. It's not too risky an application. It's a tried and tested kind of application. We are not the first ones doing it. Uh, there's enough experience both within the organization and outside the organization if we need to tap into it. From an architectural complexity measure perspective, there's cost and legal and compliance and all of these other things that you see which can give you a good perspective of this specific epic. The strategy and plan is about who are we really focusing this functionality, in this case, of course, the phone app on. Who are we building it for? What kind of a platform are we building it for? Uh, uh, and when are we going to launch it? And in this case, we've even got a name for it. What are we going to benefit? How is the organization going to benefit? Well, you can see that there too, there is incremental revenue, as I mentioned, but primarily it's about customer adoption, customer time savings, and customer loyalty. So you can see it's really got to do with customer satisfaction. And who are the stakeholders that are supposed to be focused on realizing these benefits? That's Elise Morrison, and of course, as the prime uh, beneficiary, and then you have Abigail Smith. So here is an example of what an architecturally relevant epic looks like. I trust this has given a good idea, given you a good idea of how to flesh out an epic using the canvas that I just ran through. Thank you.